Starting from point L4, it can be seen in the rotating frame that the third body is acted on two different time scales. There's a short time scale which seems to correspond approximately to the time scale in which the bodies move around the Sun in the inertial frame, but there is also a longer time scale, in this one something between 10 and 20 times that time scale. So you can see that body 3 gets closer to and then further away from body 2. It seems to make an angle with it between about 40 and 80 degrees, but averaging about 60 degrees. Starting instead just that little bit further away from the L4 point, you can see again there is a short time scale applying of the order of the time scale of rotation, but the longer time scale you can see, well, it is naturally now a little bit longer because the body reaches all the way past point L3 and approaches point L5. It can also be seen that when the body is moving from L4 to L5, it is slightly closer to the Sun in yellow than it is, as can be seen at the moment, on its way back from L5 to L4. So now it's approaching L4, past L4, but it doesn't approach body 2 in red. Instead, it starts to move back away, and after several rotations around the Sun in yellow, it's now approaching L3 again. So past L3, and it will approach L5 once more. So round L5 and now moving away from body 2. It all seems to slow down a little bit as it approaches near to L3. And now starts moving away from L3 in the direction of L4. Past L4, closer to body 2, but then starts to move away from body 2 again. And then now once more approaching L3. And so on. Instead, starting just outside L2, it can be seen in the rotating frame that the object just hovered for a bit before it starts to move further away from body 2 in red. So now really it is rotating in its own elliptical orbit around the Sun. In the rotating frame, of course, it appears to have a very different shape, but in the inertial frame you can see we have something approaching an ellipse here. Of course, the time scale is somewhat slowed down here as opposed to the L4 experiments. But yes, it is moving around the Sun in an ellipse, and it will continue to move in an ellipse until such time as it approaches body 2 again. So we can see here it looks like it's going to go outside body 2 here. But in the inertial frame you can see the ellipse, it seems to be moving around the Sun in. So now moving on the part of the ellipse taking it further away from the Sun. Again, we can see it has passed outside body 2 there. So the object has passed its outermost distance from the Sun. And is now passing reasonably close to body 2 here. And we can see now that the ellipse has changed slightly. So every time it passes near body 2, the ellipse is going to change slightly. It will always remain very close to an ellipse, but a slightly different ellipse now. This part of the ellipse looks quite similar to what it was before, so it's now really completed the circuit of the new ellipse. Now starting just inside the L2 point, you can see not a great deal happening for a bit, but now it does seem that the object has started moving around body 2 in red. Does seem to move between from being outside to inside body 2. Effectively, what has happened is that it's moved away from L2 towards body 2, and in fact has effectively become a satellite of body 2. Of course, it is interesting to speculate about whether, if a more sophisticated numerical routine was used, slightly different behavior would occur in this point. Now starting just outside the L1 point, the object hovers but then moves away from the L1 point, moving towards body 2, and effectively it has, like in the previous case, become a satellite of body 2. Again, it would be interesting to try this with a more sophisticated numerical routine. And then starting just inside L1, you can see it seems to hover just inside L1, but then starts moving away from the L1 point. in the rotating frame, it seems to have an almost triangular type of orbit here, but you can see in the inertial frame it does have an elliptical orbit around the Sun. So you can see it's at the outermost point of the orbit. Well, it started moving in now, past the innermost point where it does indeed seem to move more quickly, out towards the outermost point again. It's opposite L2 at the moment, but now it starts to approach L2. It's moving away from the Sun here. Now you can see it's about to move inside body 2. And again moving around in its elliptical orbit. Opposite body 2. Sometimes closer, sometimes further away, and you can see it's getting reasonably close to body 2 now, and you can see now just a slight deviation from the ellipse that it's had on previous orbits. So an approach close to L2 has resulted in just a marginally different orbit. So an even closer approach would of course result in a more significantly different orbit there. Starting from L3, you can see the frame is rotating quite quickly here, and it looks like the two objects remain on opposite sides of the star in yellow. The massless object in orange seems to be opposite the red one, but eventually it will start to move. And once that happens, it's going to start moving around a circular orbit there. So it does seem to have started moving now, and it can be seen, yes, it's moving away from L3, keeping approximately the same distance from L1. It's just zooming in a little bit there. It approaches body 2 and then turns back on itself, heading back for L3. It's past L4, back near L3. Things seem to have slowed down a bit as it passes L3. It probably won't hover as long as it did just when things were being started off. But now, yes, it is past L3, heading now towards L5. Past L5, approaches body 2, and again it turns round and now is heading back towards L3 to complete an orbit. Slows down at this point,